Welcome to the 2018 season. Last week we brought you our Northwest preview. This week we are doing our Upstate preview. You look at the Upstate last year. Last year, Shane, on this very stage, we said that the Upstate had a lot of parity going back in 2017. Fast forward to 2018, and it looks like there's even more parity with the exception of one, maybe two schools. But there's also a potential sleeper that could be climbing into the rankings as well.
Right, and we'll get to that with each team preview. But like you said, you got a lot of teams that are kind of bunched up together, and I mean, you still got the lower end of the spectrum, some teams leaving next year. Just a lot of interesting dynamic to the Upstate this year.
So, I mean, you look at the two teams that are leaving. Obviously, Warren's going up to Blackhawk to be a part of a co-op next year. Polo is leaving the conference to go to 8-man football. Last year as well, you know, we thought there would be a changing of the guard type thing. We said that on the set with Aquin being the favorites last year. But it was actually Stockton who came out with another undefeated record in the NUIC Upstate to go ahead and win their 6th conference title over the last 7 seasons.
Right, and how many times haven't we discounted Stockton and they end up winning the conference anyway? So it's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, and I mean, if you take a look at the conference titles since 2006, I mean, Stockton has those 6 titles. The next closest are Polo and Aquin with 2 titles apiece. East Dubuque and Galena, which are now in the northwest side of the conference, also have 2 titles apiece. And then you got Milledgeville with the 1 title back in 2008.
Right, you're starting to get pretty far down the line as years removed. So, I mean, Stockton and Aquin have pretty much run the show the last 10 years, so to speak.
Right. So, I mean, one of the big things that a lot of people see when they see the NUIC, they think state championships. And we've been putting it out there a lot, chasing 20 this year. The only thing is you look at the last 10 years, and the Upstate only has the 1 state runner-up, which was Stockton back in 2012 when they lost to Maroa Forsyth 48-24.
Right, and I mean, we've been pretty vocal about it. The difference between the 2 sides of the conference is pretty noticeable. And kind of we talked a little bit about it, seeing where the conference is going to go moving forward, whether we realign geographically seems to make a lot of sense. Try to keep the strengths where out of one side and into the other. I mean, try to get an even playing field and help some of those smaller schools see potential playoff teams throughout the year so they're prepared when the playoffs roll around.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, you look at the geographical alignment only makes sense. I mean, the whole reason why the big side, small side was made up in the first place was because you had a bunch of 2A schools and 1A schools back then.
Right.
That's no longer the case. I mean, the majority of the NUIC is now all 1A schools. You got 8-man starting to shake up the turmoil here, so to speak. And, I mean, who knows where the NUIC is going to be in the next 2 years. But right now, obviously, we got 2 schools leaving at the end of this year, so that puts the NUIC at 15 schools entering the 2019 season. All right, we have River Ridge head coach Doug Nicholas here with us tonight. Doug, welcome to the set. You're actually the first head coach we've interviewed in NUIC FF headquarters. Last week we did Joe Free for the first time. Now we got you.
I appreciate it. It's a great honor.
Excellent. So we're just going to cut to the chase right away here, get off some good questions. For the Wildcats to be successful in 2018, what do you need to have happen?
I think the logical answer right away is we have to stay healthy. I mean, we don't have a lot of numbers. We're still in the mid-teens for the varsity level. We have 35 total, but for us to be successful, we need to stay healthy this year. Our seniors need to lead by example to our younger kids, and we just need to improve week to week.
Very well. Who's someone that's not getting the spotlight that has to have a big year for you guys in order to be successful that many people might not know about outside of your star players?
Yeah, I think for us, we have a lot of skill players that have quite a bit of recognition, but really it's going to come down to those 5 guys up front, our offensive line, our defensive line. How well they play this year is probably going to determine how far we go.
Excellent. So, Doug, with no further ado, it's something that you've told me to keep quiet for quite a while, and I have. But River Ridge brings back the most yardage in the NUIC this year. We mentioned last week that EPC had the most amount in the Northwest, but it's River Ridge that brings back the most yardage. What do you guys need to do to keep building to challenge to build on your progress with the challenge of low numbers?
Yeah, kind of like we joked offset a little bit. We do have that number's kind of skewed because we were behind so many games. We were forced our hand to throw the ball. So we do have a really good set of skill players. They're pretty established as far as getting reps in, as far as game time. They've played for 3, some of them 4 years. So really it's going to come down to those underclassmen that are coming up to play. And like I said earlier, it's going to be our offensive line that pushes the way in our defensive line. And then it moves over to the defensive side of the ball. We have to get stops this year. Last year we were just on the field too much on defense, and this year for us to be successful, we have to be able to get off the field on third down.
Jacob Spear threw for 554 yards against Moose Heart. That was an NUIC single game record. He will return as the leading passer in the whole conference this year. What does he need to do this year for the Wildcats to achieve your guys' goals?
Jacob's been a really good leader for us. This will be year 3 now, and he's got a lot of potential as a quarterback and as a linebacker. We need him to stay focused on his position, knowing that he's just one of 11 on the field for us, and he has to trust those other 10 to do their job.
So, Doug, who's your pick to win the Upstate 2018?
I mean, you look at it on paper, you say Milledgeville and Stockton are probably the 2, but I think Coach Doyle's team in Orangeville has got a really good shot at it as well.
There you have it. Coach, thanks for sitting in. Good luck to you in the River Ridge Wildcats this year. We expect to see you guys making your way up the ranks. You are our surprise team, as you probably already are aware, to make the playoffs in 2018, so we wish you the best of luck.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope that comes true by the end of the year.
Won't make us a profit. All right, we have Jay Doyle here, head coach of the Orangeville Broncos. Jay, thanks for coming on set with us to preview the Broncos for 2018.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, last year you saw the Broncos make the playoffs for the first time since 2010. It was the first time in your coaching era, so congratulations on that. How do you build on that success going forward while you lose conference MVP Austin Guy?
Well, I think the young guys seen what it takes to be a playoff team. And I think that is a week-to-week process that they knew they had to get ready. They've seen that. We bring quite a few guys back. Losing Austin will hurt, but there's new guys in the fold that I think are ready to take his place.
Coach, the last time Orangeville made back-to-back playoff appearances, you were the quarterback. Have you had to remind your kids what another playoff trip this year means to Orangeville?
No, I mean, that was a while ago. As we talked before, I think it was the 95-96 year, which they know that stat now after reading what you guys wrote a while back about us. But you don't think of that. They don't know what the history is. I mean, they just know what their history is, and that is last year, some sophomores and juniors, they made the playoffs, and their expectations are not what we did in the last 20 years. It's what we've done in the last 3-4 years of what they've been a part of. And I think that's a credit to them that their expectations are high, and they expect a lot out of themselves. And if that is playoffs, that's playoffs. And if we don't make it, I think they gave everything they had.
Very good. What do you feel needs to happen for the Broncos to be successful in 2018?
Well, I think as Coach said earlier, we got to stay healthy. That's our number one goal. It's like any goal for any small school team is you got to stay healthy. You got to keep your main guys up front healthy, your backs healthy, and get through a 9-game season to playoffs healthy and not lose any of your main players. I think we have some depth this year that we haven't had before, that we can fill some holes in the line and in the backfield. And it just having the ball bounce your way. We had some good games last year. We won last-second field goal in overtime. We won some of them games. We played a very good game down in Kirkland. And I think we have a tougher schedule than last year this year. So, with the matchups we have. So we're going to have to play a full 9-game schedule. And week in and week out, I don't think there's a game that you can look past.
I would agree with that.
Every team's got a player that their go-to player. Who is someone that isn't in the spotlight but has to be huge for you guys in order to be successful this year?
I think you could name anybody on our offensive line, and also our tight end with how we play. That they have to get the job done up front. And then, as we talked about Austin before, he was such a factor in our offensive sets and everything, we have, I think, 4 or 5 guys that can handle a workload, and I think that's going to what helps us this year is we're a little more balanced team.
Well, I remember last year when me and you were talking about Austin, you know, we were talking about how you guys used them at the quarterback and you were running rollout options with them all the time. And it was week 7, you said, I got a surprise for you.
Yeah, we were 3-3 at the time, and we had to make somewhat of a change, and we kind of scrapped everything we did almost a year early because you kind of play with what you have, and we were more of a open court type team. We had, they were very good basketball players, wide open. You wanted to get them one-on-one to where, we were 3-3, kind of at a crossroads heading to Kirkland, and Austin was playing too much, east-west. We wanted to get him north-south. When we went to Kirkland, he was able to do that. But, we're going to be more of that this year. We got some guys that can do that, and I think we're going to be a more physical team than what we have been.
Coach, who's the team to beat in the Upstate this year?
I think anytime you look at the history of the conference, as you said, Stockton has always been the team. And when I was asked last year, when everyone, kind of wasn't picking them, I said, you kind of pick who you pick, who it's been. It's kind of like when you pick who's making playoffs. It's like, when we talk about us not making it, the common denominators normally are, well, Lena's going to make it, Dakota's going to make it, and you have that and who's not going to make it. And you want to be the team that they say, well, Orangeville's going to make it. You know what I mean? So I picked Stockton. You pick the Aquins, the Milledgevilles. And I think you look at us, River Ridge, and those other schools, we all have shots. We have the athletes on the outside that, that can create some mismatches. But, you pick Stockton, Milledgeville with what they have coming back until someone beats them.
All right, so Jay, thanks a lot for coming on set, answering our questions, giving us an outlook on what you see the Broncos being in 2018. We'll get to our preview with Orangeville later on in the conversation here, but we definitely both see Orangeville being a player in the Upstate this year, and we wish you guys the best of luck.
Appreciate it.
You bet. The Warren Warriors ended the season with a 1-7 record last year, going 0-7 in the Upstate. Their lone win came against South Beloit, but they had also forfeited their Week 7 matchup with Lena Winslow. This year, do you think that they can be more competitive in 2018?
I don't see it happening. And to go back to that Week 7 against Lena Winslow, I don't really blame them. Low numbers and like that, I wouldn't have wanted any part with Lena Winslow last year or this week or this year, Week 7 either. That's kind of been a question mark. Whether they'll play that game still remains to be seen. That's kind of where I'm at with that as well.
Well, and this year you got Sean Teskey taking back over as the head coach there as Jared McNutt left to go to EPC. He coached Warren from 2012 to 2014, leading them to 2 playoff appearances with no wins. You look at Warren, though, they do have some good players coming back. They got 1,217 yards returning this year in the career. Big names, Ethan Williams and Garrett Williams. Ethan Williams last year had 389 yards receiving with 6 touchdowns and another 250 yards rushing with another 3 touchdowns. And then you got Garrett Williams, who had 142 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns and 144 yards receiving with another touchdown. And Garrett was also named honorable mention all-conference linebacker as well. On top of that, you bring back Ryan Molitor, Andrew Schlickenmeyer. Both of them were receivers last year as well. Brady Cox is another one, and Aiden Mahoney. And then you got guys on the line, Seth Slamp, Skylar Neff, Reed Raisbeck, and Trace Albrecht. So
they return a lot of linemen.
They got a lot of guys returning, but they're just not a lot of numbers.
Right.
They're like they have been last year. They're going to have to stay healthy, like you stated. Who knows if they're going to play that Week 7 matchup with Lena Winslow. Time will tell. As of right now, it's a go. Right. They do pick up another game as well with Westmont in Week 8. That's a 3A school, but that's a school, too, that they're suffering with number issues as well. So we'll see how that plays out for them also.
Right, just a lot of unknowns for Warren this year. They're heading to that co-op with Blackhawk next year, so this is kind of a last hurrah for Warren football, unfortunately, in the NUIC. So we'll see what happens.
The River Ridge Wildcats finished last year with a 2-7 record, matching the record that they had in 2016. They went 1-6 in the Upstate. In their short history of fielding their own team, the Wildcats have suffered some large defeats. However, this year they return a plethora of playmakers that could see them get to the playoffs. Can the Cats make that jump and put it all together?
Well, I don't see why not. Something we touched a little bit on with the coach interview, that they are our sleeper team, so to speak. Just look at all the yardage they return on the offensive side of the ball. I know coach said that it could be misleading with the amount of games they were trailing, but I mean, yardage is yardage. The kids are capable of that. Definitely a positive note.
Well, what could also be misleading is the fact they left out that, they were ahead or within 2 points during the third quarter of 8 of their 9 games last year as well. So it's not like they weren't being competitive. I mean, we stated it last year. River Ridge, you could see them back in 2016 as they slowly got better, and they started off, they were like 0-7, got 2 wins in the last 3 weeks. Last year, they started off 2-2. They ended up losing their last 5 games to close out the season, but you could just see that the scores were there. They were competing in those games, and I mean, that stat just proves it.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the team learns how to win, learns how to finish. You take some of those games that they lost and you put them in the win column, and suddenly, you're 4-5, and it's not looking too bad.
Well, and you look at River Ridge's schedule, too this year. They have to go out of conference. They're going to Ottawa to play Hoopston area in Week 9.
Right.
And I know, talking to Coach Nicholas earlier this year as well, that could be a game that could be that matchup to decide if they make the playoffs or not.
Right, and, that's not going to be a school around here that decides that. So that's going to be fun, too, also getting to see a team that you're not used to seeing.
And it's on a Saturday, so it's on selection Saturday to beat that.
Perfect, even better.
So look at some of the big returners that they have coming back. Obviously, they have Jacob Spear, their quarterback and linebacker. He's thrown for 2,500 yards in his career, 13 touchdowns, 347 yards rushing. On top of that, you return some playmakers. Cam Kiley, he's actually the second leading receiver returning in the conference this year. He had 585 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. He's an honorable mention all-conference end. You add with him Ben Christ at the running back position, 627 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, another 237 yards receiving. Honorable mention all-conference running back, honorable mention all-conference utility. Throw in Drew Kloss in there, 643 yards receiving in his career, 5 touchdowns, 91 yards rushing. He was an honorable mention all-conference end. Wyatt Potter, also 674 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns in his career. He was honorable mention all-conference utility. Lots of guys. You can't forget Nick Parr as well, another good kid. Dylan Landwehr, he's a junior this year. He missed part of last year with an injury. He is back, ready to go. He's going to be a kid that people have not heard about outside of the area, but expect big things from him as well.
Right, and I mean, you're looking at the returners here. You're looking at 14, 15 key returners, along with 5 honorable mention all-conference players. I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at their offensive line and defensive lines, and like Coach Nicholas said, this is the area that River Ridge really needs to get it picked up. As we stated in the preview, the Upstate just does not have the physicality that you see in the upper echelon teams in the playoffs, and you've seen it the last couple of years in the playoff scores as well. They just have not matched up. But you got Hampton Pesci, you got Dalton Walker, Jacob Solers, Keith and Virgo, and Jacob Geiken as well.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, you got all those returners, but something that also isn't said very often, if you're able to spread the ball, I mean, you look at a lot of the powerhouse Northwest teams, you meet them up in the playoffs, what are their weaknesses in the playoffs? I mean, pass defense. I mean, that's definitely something River Ridge can exploit if they get to that level where they're making the playoffs.
Oh, I agree with that as well. And, I mean, they're running the spread. The spread's the right offense that they need to be running, especially with their line size. But their line this year is going to average over 210 pounds across the front. So that's going to be critical as long as they can get physical. Now, you look at what they have going forward. 5 wins gets them playoff eligible. But looking at, unless Galena picks up in the win column, Hoopston has not had a record of success either. I think they're going to need 6 wins to make the playoffs this year. AFC Raiders were 3-6 last year, 2-5 in the Upstate. They had a lot of promise the last 2 seasons, but they've kind of fallen short of reaching their full potential. They have some experience returning. Do you think Coach Winterling can get the multi-option attack off and running in 2018?
I'm not really sure. I mean, a lot of returners, but not really a lot of experience, so to speak. It doesn't help when you're crossovers with a contending team out of the Northwest. AFC is going to take their lumps this year, and I hate to say it, but that's just where I see things going for them.
I mean, one of the good things is that their non-conference game is against South Beloit, as South Beloit has scheduled both Stockton and AFC as non-conference games this season. So, I mean, the potential's there. They're going to have a tough game starting out the gates. They host River Ridge in week 1.
Right.
But week 2, they go to Dakota.
Right. And Dakota's one of those teams where they're going to be playing up at the caliber that Lena Winslow is going to be. I mean, those are 2 of the top teams out of the conference. I don't think that's going to bode well for AFC, especially on a tough place to play on the road. And, you know, you look after that, you got Aquin and Orangeville. So, I mean, things don't really even up going forward there either.
No, it's definitely a tough go. I mean, you could very easily see AFC get out of the gates with an 0-4 record, especially looking at where we see Aquin, Orangeville, Dakota, and River Ridge all contending at this year. They may not see that first victory until week 5 when they do get South Beloit.
Right, and that's one of those things where we don't ever really have a clue what South Beloit is until you see them on the field. History kind of speaks for itself there. And after that, you know, you got Stockton and Milledgeville. So, I mean, it's good morning, good afternoon, and good night, unfortunately, for the Raiders.
Unfortunately. But, I mean, they do have some good returners. They got Caleb McBride back. They have Cameron Thomas, Marcus Cater, Devontae Harris, Malachi Ball, Alexander's back. You got Sawyer Murphy and Austin Williams. And then you got a couple other guys, not sure where they're going to go, but you got Sam Lauer and Matt Thompson. And then Tyler Reyes, Jonah Hilliker, Daniel Hoffman, and Matt Nelson, to name a few.
Right.
Like you said, they got guys coming back. It's just, where are they going to put these guys? They don't have a lot of experience. So we got to see what happens going forward. And it doesn't look like AFC is going to have a very good year. But you never know. I mean, you got to play the games.
Right.
You never know what Coach Winterland will do to get them going. The Orangeville Broncos finished the year 5-5, 5-4 in the regular season, 3-4 in the Upstate. However, they did make the playoffs where they lost in the first round to Anawan Wethersfield, 31-14. They made the first postseason appearance in the Jay Doyle era. Do you think they can make it 2 in a row in 2018?
Yeah, I mean, no reason not to. You lose awesome guy, but like Coach said, you're looking at the younger levels to fill what he brought to the team. I mean, that's always hard to do when you lose a player of such caliber. But you know, look at their freshman and junior classes. This could be the start for what we think could be a long, sustained playoff run for the Broncos.
Well, and I mean, you talk to Coach Doyle. You know, he thinks that the group of kids he has for now through the freshman level, they want to be there. They want to play. They're not focused on what their past was. They're focused on what they're doing.
Right.
And that drive and determination is what Orangeville needs in order to be successful, especially when you think that, you know, like we stated earlier, last time Orangeville made the playoffs was 95-96 in back-to-back years when Jay Doyle and assistant coach Willie Guy were the stars for the Orangeville Broncos then.
Right. I mean, this group of kids is really looking to start their own tradition moving forward. You know, you look at some of the powerhouses over the years. I mean, it's all the kids know the history of the programming. I mean, that gives these group of kids a chance to do that moving forward for Orangeville.
Hey, I mean, and they got a lot of studs returning, very well home-knowing names these days. 2,514 yards, but you got Garrett Rodeball, you know, 679 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. You have Dalton Lowe back, 673 yards rushing. Carter Kleckler's back at the quarterback position, 222 yards passing last year when he became the Week 7 starter against Hiawatha. He was also honorable mention All-Conference DB. Rodeball was honorable mention All-Conference defensive line. Brandon Rates is back. He was honorable mention All-Conference defensive line. He'll be back in the running back position as well. You got Brayton Schofield back, who was first-team All-Conference tight end. Talon Pelican is back for the linebacker position. and on the offensive line. He was first team all-conference as an offensive lineman. Honorable mention all-conference at the linebacker position. Then you add in the likes of Noah Ashe, Nate Rackow, Ian Wilson, Chad Diddens, and Brett Scott. I mean, you got some good dudes there that can make things happen for the Broncos this year.
Right, I mean, you just listed 5 all-conference players that are coming back. Any coach would gladly take that on any given year.
Right. So, I mean, really it all comes down to what can Orangeville do? And, I mean, you look at their schedule. They got Toledo Cumberland in Week 7. It's kind of stepping out of the comfort zone for Orangeville because that's going to be a good tested game, especially when you have the likes of Milledgeville, Stockton. You still have that crossover game with East Dubuque in which they squeaked that one out last year in overtime against a team that had pretty much pummeled them the year before.
Right, and I mean, that Week 7 matchup with Toledo is good. I mean, because they're going to give you some playoff points if you need them, whereas the following week against East Dubuque, we do not have them finishing very well at all. So you're not going to get anything out of East Dubuque. So, I mean, scheduling with Toledo is going to help out a long way.
Well, if you paid attention to our Northwest video last week, our panel vote was that East Dubuque was going to go 0-9, which means Orangeville is our favorite to win that game. But you still got to play the game, and like we said, I mean, East Dubuque's going to be a tough challenge. It's just whether or not they can get their offensive and defensive lines up to speed.
Right. I mean, they return a lot of players as well, so I mean, it should be a pretty good game, though.
It's going to be a good game. That one's going to be in East Dubuque this year for the Broncos, so they got to go on the road for that one. But you know, the Toledo game's going to be a good one as well. Milledgeville there in week, week 5, they got Milledgeville, that was the game that we were hoping would be a Saturday. Now with the light issue in Orangeville, is going to be a Saturday game. So, big games for Orangeville, especially with the Saturday schedule. I expect to see some big crowds for a lot of football fans on Saturday afternoons in Orangeville this fall.
Right, and I mean, the light situation worked out to be good for local fans, so.
It sure did. The Polo Marcos finished the year 5-4. They were 4-3 in the Upstate. However, with that 5-4 mark in their Week 9 loss to EPC, they did not qualify for the playoffs. They've already committed to the Illinois 8-man league for the 2019 season. Do you think this move is going to spark others' interest to move as well?
I think it's definitely a possibility. Especially now that we know other teams are trying to co-opt to save their program. You know, it only takes one to make the rest fall, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, some of the teams that have been rumored, obviously Aquin, River Ridge, Orangeville's been in the talk, AFC's been in the talk. Milledgeville, they've tried to make a co-op offer with Eastland and with EPC. They were trying different options. I don't know which direction it's going to go. Obviously, you talk to different people. They're not sure. I mean, some of them are only playing on a year-to-year basis. Even.
Right. I'm personally not a fan of the 8-man. I mean, you're losing 3 kids basically on the side of the ball. But I understand that, you know, you do what you got to do to keep kids involved.
Well, that's the other thing. You know, a lot of the things that interest the 8-man is the fact that you're keeping your own identity as a school. And, you know, you start to see these schools in North Dakota and Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, where they have only 8-man football, and you're starting to see Division I recruiters and Division II recruiters going there and scouting them because of the athleticism of the game.
Right. And, you know, this will be Polo's last year, and then we'll finally have some answers to that moving forward, you know, as things evolve. But, you know, for this year, you're looking at a team that returns quite a bit on the offensive side of the ball.
So what do you think their impact in 2018 will be to get back to the postseason in their final NUIC season?
Well, I mean, we kind of disagree on this a little bit. I mean, basically coming down to a victory or two. You know, I have them right on that cusp. You have them a little lower. We'll see what happens. I mean, they're definitely going to have some winnable games, but you got to play the games, you know. Edwardsville Lutheran's on their schedule.
Well, that's going to be a blowout.
Right.
We don't even need to discuss that one.
And, you know, Warren as well. So, I mean, there's a couple games that you kind of put in your pocket, hopefully, if you're Polo.
Yes, and then you look at the rest of their season, I mean, AFC could be a win.
Right. There's 3, potentially. So, but And I mean, you have EPC getting you some solid playoff points as well if you do get to that 5-4 mark. But
Well, I mean, you look at their week 1 game, they got Orangeville in Orangeville on Saturday. They beat Orangeville last year 20-12, which honestly, if I were to call that game later on in the year, I'd be picking Orangeville over
Right.
Polo.
right,
I think we actually both agreed that Orangeville was going to win that game last year in week 1. I think we both picked Orangeville, but or you did anyway, or I don't know. Either way, it was close. It was a great game, 20-12. And who knows? I mean, I know Polo has created some dislikes around the conference over the past couple of years when they were running up scores on everybody, and I'm sure now that they're kind of at that level where they're hurting,
well,
people are ready to return that favor.
that's the risk you take, though. I mean, you run up the score, and you got to be prepared to take the punches.
Do you think that led to their 8-man decision?
You know, I mean, it's one of those things.
Anyway, they do return some good players. They got Braden Solto back at the quarterback position. He had 1,242 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 402 yards rushing. Very good dual threat quarterback. You got Brady Webb back, his main target as well, 358 yards, 3 touchdowns, 267 yards rushing as well. First team all-conference and an honorable mention all-conference defensive back. Ethan Villas is back, Tucker Mumford, and then you got Dravin Wells on the offensive and defensive lines, where he was an honorable mention all-conference on both as well. You add in the likes of Casey Thacker, Patrick Call, Dylan Collins, and then you got a couple others that, you know, could step into big roles, but they don't have a lot of numbers, only 8 seniors to 4 juniors this year, so they're going to be playing some underclassmen.
Right, and that's pretty much been what we've been talking about. A lot of these teams that you return a lot, but what you're going to get out of them remains to be seen.
So we'll see what Polo does in 2018. The Milledgeville Missiles finished the year 8-3. They were 7-2 in the regular season, 5-2 in the Upstate. They ended up losing in the second round to the eventual state champs, Lena Winslow, 49-16. A game in which it was 43-0 going into halftime, and then the second half came around and
was able to put some points on the board.
yes, but you take a look outside of teams called Forreston and Tuscola, that was the closest game that Lena Winslow took in the playoffs last year.
Right. I mean, I think that was kind of a little bit of a surprise to some people, but I mean, we kind of figured what that was going to be. I mean, Milledgeville had a decent team, and I mean, this year, I mean, you return all those kids. I mean, everybody but 2 starters. I mean, that's a load.
Well, I mean, you look at what Milledgeville was last year. I mean, we said it quite a bit last year, and I feel the same way going into this year. I mean, you look at the Upstate Conference, this is probably your most physical team you got in the conference across the whole board. They met their expectations that they were expected to have in 2017. They returned everybody but just 2 starters due to graduation from last year. So the Missiles should have higher expectations coming into 2018.
Right. And you return that many kids, I mean, you kind of look from a year-to-year basis on the state title teams, you know, that were young a year before. Not saying Milledgeville's state title team, but, I mean, you return that much, you expect to go further than the second round this year.
So, with what Milledgeville has returning, do you think that they can break through with their first conference title since 2008?
Oh, absolutely, and that's exactly where I actually put them on top. You know, got a favorable schedule outside of, you know, a couple of the teams we already mentioned, but, you know, Farmer City, Warren, AFC, you know, I mean, they should be in a good position to run the table on the upstate side.
So, I mean, they returned 3,912 yards.
Right. That's a lot.
A couple of the big returners, obviously you got Carson Boyer back, 1,187 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns. Honorable mention all-conference running back, first team all-conference defensive back. You got Nate Ron back as well, who had 792 yards rushing with 13 touchdowns. He was a first-team all-conference running back and linebacker. You got Mason McKenna back on the offensive and defensive lines, where he was honorable mention all-conference at center. Jacob Harchie's back at that fullback position, 313 yards rushing last year with 3 touchdowns. And then you got Jack Munn's back at quarterback as well.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You're returning pretty much everybody. You know, I mean,
Right. So then you can add in Cade Guslov, Marcus McKenna, Damon Miller. You got Christian Tom Smith, very fast, good in the defensive back. He hasn't really gotten much touches as far as being a running back, but that should change going into this year as well. And then you got Thane Yingling as well. He's going to do a lot as far as the offensive side, and he is at the receiver position, and then he's going to pick up a lot at the defensive back
let's just
position.
say, I mean, you've listed a lot of key returns here with the small yardage. Those are all guys that are going to be expected to make that step up from what they were last year going into this year.
So, I mean, Milledgeville has the cogs in place,
Right.
obviously. You can add in a couple guys, Nick Smith, Ryan Kendall, and Grant Sherman. All should get good playing time, significant amounts to lead the Missiles, where we both see them going to the top of the Upstate Conference in 2018.
Right.
The Aquin Bulldogs finished last year 9-3, going 6-1 in the Upstate. They lost in the quarterfinals to Lena Winslow 67-28. Shane, that was a game that prior to the game, Aquin fans thought, oh yeah, we can play with Lena Winslow, and then Lena Winslow took the field that Saturday afternoon in Freeport, and there was a huge silence from the
Yeah.
Aquin sidelines.
That game pretty much went the way we thought it would, and everybody but someone wearing an Aquin jersey. I mean, that was just a old-fashioned,
Butt whooping?
yeah.
So, they have made back-to-back quarterfinal appearances. Troy Barr has stepped down as the head coach. Now in steps Brock Kunder. And he brings with him Dan Blackburn and two other assistant coaches from Freeport to bring Freeport to Aquin.
Right.
They lose a great QB in Jonah Deemer, two receivers, Bryce Carlson and Zach Cummins, and then they lose to Cole Ludeking and Cole Stiegel. Do you think the Bulldogs can keep this run going despite all these changes?
I'm not really sure about that. I think that Aquin's recent success is going to come to a screeching halt this year. But how many times haven't we said that before, where we expect them to be down and they somehow win 6 or 7 games and they're right there at the end? That's a lot to overcome, though. I mean, they return about 100 yards on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of yardage per se returning. They do have a very good young talent
Right.
with good potential upside. Like, if I look outside 2018 and look into 2019,
They're a year away.
yeah, I see Aquin being very good in 2019, 2020.
Right.
I just don't see them being very good in 2018.
Right, team.
Are they going to be competitive? Absolutely.
Right.
They're not going to be a team that you're going to want to go in and overlook. You got to come in prepared, because if you don't, they're going to find a way to win.
That's just
It's
it.
Aquin.
Right. I mean, you can't overlook Aquin, and no team really generally does, because, I mean, everybody puts up their best effort against Aquin. It's just
I mean,
the way
let's
it is.
face it. I mean, everybody wants to beat the Bulldogs. It's just the way it goes.
Right.
You're right. I mean, being Aquin, you've got a long list of rivalries throughout the years, either
Right.
old or new.
Right.
You've created them through time. So, yes, when you have that, people want to beat you. I mean, it's no different than any other rivalry. Aquin just has a lot of them.
Yep.
As far as key returners, you do have William Gustafson coming back at the quarterback. Well, I shouldn't say coming back at the quarterback
Right.
position. He's stepping into the quarterback position, but he did see some time in the field during the playoffs last year. You got Ethan Yount coming back at running back. He didn't see a lot of time either. Patrick Cease is coming back at the tight end position. Again, not a favorite target of Jonah's,
Right.
but he's going to step into a big role this year as one of the primary targets for the Bulldogs, as he is a favorite of Gustafson's. Colin Challenger is back, and then you got Sean Curry back.
They just got a lot of holes to fill.
They do.
I mean, realistically.
Now, one kid that nobody knows about. This kid's pretty good. He's only a sophomore. and nobody's heard of him, but Andrew Bowman is going to be stepping in as one of the starting wide receivers. And he's already got a great connection with Gustafson in their offense. He could be one of those guys that turns into a Bryce Carlson type of player.
Right. But what they got to be careful of is not making him your target every single play, like has happened in the past.
Well, that's where you get guys like Ty Stekel is there. He's going to also be back this year. He's only a sophomore. He can provide that spark as well. In fact, a lot of people think he's even more competitive than his older brother Cole was.
Right.
So that's a huge plus side for Ty and his development forward. You got Brennan Carlson as well, younger brother of Bryce Carlson. He is going to be in the mix.
Yeah. And a lot of household names coming back throughout the years. Aquin.
It's Aquin. I mean, you can sit here and say what you want about Aquin, but when it comes down to it, it's still a family community school.
Right, which brings you, to the loss of talent after that failed co-op attempt that they had at the last second as well.
Well, I mean, that's one of those things, Aquin was looking to do that earlier in the year as their administration was looking for opportunities to either draw in co-ops or other ways of consuming kids into,
right,
or absorbing kids. I shouldn't say consuming. It's not recruitment, right? Absorbing kids into the Aquin school system. However, it didn't work out. And then now, all of a sudden, a week before practice begins, Our Lady of the Sacred Heart says, hey, we do want a co-op.
Right. And, Aquin paints the picture that they don't have enough kids and, this is do or die. But when you have 30 or 35 kids, I mean, you don't need it this year. You're going to have schools that are going to vote against it, whether this was planned a year ago or if you're contacting other people on a weekend and asking for a vote in 3 days. I mean, let's be real here.
I agree with that. And, I mean, had it been put together last year and brought forward for this year ahead of time, yeah, you may have still had a couple nay votes, but I guarantee you it goes through.
Right.
Trying to ramrod it down people's throats last minute just doesn't sit well when you're Aquin.
Right. And, I don't blame the schools one bit and kind of expected every school on the upstate side to vote it down. I mean, that late. I mean, you're talking games that are competitive and you're looking at your playoff picture. Do you want a school gaining, 3 or 4 kids that are going to make a difference? No. I mean,
well, and that's just it. You got 2 kids that play for Our Lady of the Sacred Heart that would have made immediate impacts to Aquin that could take them easily from where we project them to be into a definite playoff position.
Right.
That's going to knock somebody else out of the playoffs. That could be a River Ridge. That could be an Orangeville. That could be a Stockton. That could be an upset of Milledgeville. Who knows?
Right.
But either way, somebody that we expect to make the playoffs could eventually be hurt by that move.
Right. I mean, you kind of I don't know how you try to push this through and not expect the results that you got. I mean,
well, I just don't understand how the naysayers are like, well, we got to make the conference stronger. Yeah, everybody agrees we got to make the conference stronger. There's a proper way of doing that, and ramrodding it through with 2 days to go before practice begins is not the way to do it.
Right. I mean, rules apply to everybody.
So
I'll leave it at that.
As far as what they got coming back, though, you look at their offensive and defensive lines. You got Grayson DeMichael back. You got Griffin Whalen, Brady Carlisle, Tyler Geiken, and Tanner Kuhl. These guys are young, but they are going to set up very good looking forward going into 2019, where I expect Aquin to be a true power, with or without a co-op. The Stockton Blackhawks finished last year with an 8-3 record, going 7-0 in the Upstate, 7-2 in the regular season before losing that big second-round game to Aquin, 21-14. Honestly, Shane, had they won that game and won, it made much difference outside of a quarterfinal appearance because they would have still got dethroned, throttled by Lena Winslow the following week.
Right.
However,
they did themselves a favor.
Yeah, they didn't have to face that. New coach, same old Stockton result. another undefeated conference run. Their 6th conference title over the past 7 seasons. The Blackhawks are going to be heralded by many to be the team to beat. But they still have a lot of holes to fill in order to keep their run of success going in 2018.
Right, and I mean, anytime you're coming off, the conference championship like that, and you return your top running back in Dvorak, I mean, those are going to be your expectations. So, I mean, it's not really a surprise, so to speak.
Well, here again, I mean, you think about it. You look at what we've talked about earlier with Orangeville, what we've talked about earlier with River Ridge. You look at Stockton. Those 3 teams each returned 5 all-conference players apiece.
Right. I mean, there you have it. I mean, that's once again a good place of where you want to be.
Some guy's paper was trying to put points on how many all-conference teams you had coming back and whatnot, and basically in his results it had Stockton, Orangeville, River Ridge as the top 3 teams to beat. The only problem is it was skewed because he didn't have Milledgeville in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, Colin Dvorak is back. 1,232 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns, 19 yards receiving. First team all-conference running back and linebacker. Add in Chase Rowe back at that other running back position. 375 yards rushing with 6 touchdowns. He was honorable mention all-conference linebacker. And then you got Drew McGovern and Drake Oppold, who were both all-conference tight ends. Drake was the first team, and Drew was honorable mention. And then you got Matt Love on the offensive line, who was honorable mention as well.
Right.
So then you look at, okay, who's going to be at quarterback? Well, that's going to be Garrett Buskey. He's going to be a junior this year. He's the younger brother of Nolan Buskey from just a couple seasons ago when him and Hayden Fox were the Showtime in Stockton. And then, you take a look at their offensive line. You got Zach Cook, Ethan Cook, Bryant Kiefer, Cody Schultz, Nick Eggy. All these guys are coming in. Most of them are juniors. You throw in Corey Rabb. Who knows where he's going to be? Last year he was at wide receiver. It looks like this year they're going to transfer him to the line. So you got a lot of people that potentially could give Stockton another making of a conference title team.
Right, and it's right there. I mean, if you haven't caught on pretty much all night, we've talked about every school is returning a ton. It's just whether or not you're going to find that growth from year to year. I mean, team can return 7 all-conference players, but how many times haven't we seen where, as a senior, they're not as good as they were as a junior?
Well, that's just it. Like you said, it goes into the off-season work. Are they working for that? Did they earn those honors just because of their name? Did their coaches give them a vote that maybe they shouldn't have potentially given them, and the vote went in favor of them?
Right.
There's many different politics behind being named all-conference. Most of them earned. Some of them could be,
off the previous years.
Right.
There's just a lot that goes into it. Definitely have some holes to fill, but Stockton does return a lot. So, I mean, it's not a surprise to me to see them named as some preseason favorites in the conference when you do, like I said, return to Dvorak. I mean, this is a kid who's going to carry the ball, 200, 250, 300 times. And they're just going to keep feeding their workhorse.
Well, it's just that. I mean, that's one thing about Dvorak. He led the entire conference in carries last year with 223. Yeah, he's easily going to get the ball. We saw it against Aquin. He ran the ball, 41 times?
Right.
I mean, he's gonna be their workhorse. You stop Dvorak, you stop Stockton. All right, so that wraps up what our Upstate Preview show is. So now we're going to go to our Upstate predictions for the 2018 season. Shane, I'll go ahead and take the lead on this as I normally do, so I take away from tradition. At number 1, I have Milledgeville going 9-0. Number 2 is Stockton at 7-2. Number 3, I have Orangeville matching Stockton's record at 7-2, but Stockton winning that matchup with Orangeville. Number 4, I have River Ridge at 5-4. Like I stated before, if they can get to that 6-1, they're a lock. 5-4 could be close, but an improvement in Galena is going to definitely help River Ridge with playoff points. After that, I have Aquin going 4-5. AFC going 3-6, and I'll probably take a beating on that one because I think Polo is going to be better than the 2-7 record that I have them at. Maybe just a touch. And I have Warren going 0-9.
Nice. I'm probably not going to list every single reason, but because I might not know, because my predictions in the past have been crap at times. 9-0 taking conference, Milledgeville, followed by Stockton at 7-2. River Ridge coming in at 6-3, followed by Orangeville at 5-4. Polo 4-5, Aquin 3-6. AFC 2-7, and Warren going winless 0-9.
So that takes us to our panel vote, where as a panel we all agree that Milledgeville will finish at 9-0. Stockton comes in at 7-2, Orangeville at 6-3, River Ridge at 5-4, Aquin at 4-5. Polo takes that number 6 spot at 3-6, with AFC going 3-6, and Warren at 0-9. Alright, so that gives you a look at what we feel the Upstate will be. Shane, like I stated earlier, I really feel that the Upstate, you're going to see a lot more parity outside of probably Warren. But the rest of the conference is definitely going to have a lot of parity. I think even more so than last year.
Right. I mean, you look at the schedule, and there's a lot of games that you could circle that could go either way. So, I mean, that's great for competition-wise.
Yeah, I mean, you do have some competitive crossover matchups, you know. Orangeville with East Dubuque. You have Milledgeville with Amboy in week 1. River Ridge with Galena in week 3.
Right.
So you got 3 games that are going to be great crossover games. I think the rest of them will definitely favor the northwest side of the conference. But, you know, you're starting to see some growth there. As far as moving forward in the next year, we'll wait till next year to get there. But as far as this year goes, definitely a lot of good things to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get things going here. We're only a couple weeks away. A lot of questions to be answered heading into week 1. Week 1 should sort some of that out as we get going here.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a big a big list of games that are going to be off the chart type games in week 1. There's definitely some important matchups that will take place in week 1 that can potentially either make or break a playoff run right from the get-go.
Right, and I mean that's the that's the best thing about the conference. I mean, week in, week out, you can't take weeks off. Every week determines your playoff lives here in the NUIC. I mean, it's where you want to be, though.
Well, and that's one of the crucial things looking at the Upstate Conference, too. I mean, with the crossover game and the non-conference game, you know, and you look at some of what these non-conference games are, they're going to have to be wins in favor of the Upstate opponents in order to guarantee that victory, because, you know, we saw it last year, we saw it 3 years ago with Aquin, you know, 5-4 teams sitting at home without a playoff berth because they don't have the points to get in.
Right, and you do find that with your crossover, your lower level Northwest teams, like you're in a dilemma. You want them to give you as many points as you can, but at the same time, you have to beat them.
Right. So, anyway, we've concluded with our previews. Next week, we begin the Week 1 previews going into the Week 1 games, which will be a lot of fun. Getting into the mix of the things where we're going to pick our winners and see what happens going forward. So, get out to the games this fall. It's going to be great games to get to. If you can make it to Saturday games, there's a lot of them on the schedule. I'd suggest you do so. As always, root for the NUIC.